I'm going to question you. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me if you understand. Who marked off its dimensions? Surely you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? On what were its footings set? Or who laid its cornerstone? While the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy. Wow. Do you think that Job is thinking right about now he shouldn't have said anything? Yeah, I would guess that too. Let's go to chapter 40. The Lord said to Job, will the one who argues with the Almighty correct him? Let him who accuses answer God. Uh-oh. Then Job answered the Lord. Of course, the Lord's told him all this stuff, right? He goes on and on from laying the foundations of the earth and gives him 1,000 other questions. Job says, I am unworthy. How can I reply to you? I put my hand over my mouth. And with that is total submission. Really. The best thing you and I can do, 99% of the time, just say no to the talking hand. So he recognizes, wow, I shouldn't have said a word. Little late. He asked for an audience, he gets it. He says, I spoke once, but I have no answer. Basically, I've said too much already. Twice, but I will say no more. Then the Lord spoke to Job out of the storm. Tells him again, brace yourself like a man. I will question you. You shall answer me. Would you discredit my justice? Would you condemn me to justify yourself? Do you have an arm like God's? Can your voice thunder like his? Wow. Job definitely is feeling about this big. Also, though, on the flip side of that, he has to be overjoyed to hear from God finally. It's what he wanted more than anything. It's what he wanted more than anything. He wanted God's presence more than his presence. He had demonstrated that. Through all of the suffering that he had been put through, he never said one wrong thing and accused God of doing wrong because he loved God's presence. He felt separated. He felt that he was not getting answered by God. And so now he's getting answered, and I'm sure he's thinking, if only my words had been different. If only I had been just simply crying out, Lord, speak to me. Lord, speak to me. Lord, speak to me, rather than all the other blah, blah, blah complaining that he did. Go with me to chapter 42. One of the interesting things about this is that Job never knows the purpose for the test. One day he will. One day he will know. But he doesn't know that this was a contest between Jesus and Satan. And that Jesus chose him because Job had allowed the Holy Spirit to prepare his heart for this very day. God goes before us always. God is always preparing us today for what he's going to have us to do tomorrow. You and I have to be listening and gaining today what we need for what God's going to ask us to do tomorrow. God didn't ask Job to do this on the day one of a relationship with him. He had a deep, abiding love for God. He had a surrendered heart to God. He loved God wholeheartedly. He understood that everything he had came from the Lord. There was no arrogance in him. This story is not about Job thinking that he was righteous and that he was arrogant and that he needed to be put in his place. An arrogant, self-righteous man could not have been used for this test. Certainly he would have cursed God long before now. He's questioning, and God allows us to question. It's where our questions can lead us. They led Job to focus on himself and the problem and why the problem's going on, rather than just simply acknowledging that God is in charge of everything and that he has a purpose for everything and that he doesn't forget us. God doesn't forget us. We might think he's forgotten us. We might think he's not watching. We might think, Lord, I'm just not feeling like I'm hearing from you. But we don't live by our feelings. We live by thus saith the Lord. When we're in a place, in a season in life, and it can happen to all of us, including myself, where we feel like we're not hearing, I believe it's because God's telling us to do nothing. Don't go off and do anything. Just sit here in my presence, go to the Word, remember who I am, go back and look at to what I have done in your life, how I have sustained you, how I have provided for you, and wait. I will continue. If I need to learn a lesson in patience, and I seem to be having to learn that over and over again, so be it, Lord. You are God, I am not. So Job replies to the Lord in chapter 42. I know that you can do all things. No plan of yours can be thwarted. You asked, who is this that obscures my counsel without knowledge? Surely I spoke of things I did not understand, things too wonderful for me to know. Now right there, is the blameless man that God chose to use. When God gave him a teaspoon of clarity, he got it instantly. You said, listen now, and I will speak. I will question you, and you shall answer me. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. He is humbled by God's presence. He is humbled. And he says, therefore, I despise myself. And it's not the word, the translation there is not so great. It should be, I humble myself. I humble myself and repent in dust, in ashes, meaning total humility. He repents of his despair. He repents of his attitude. He repents of cursing the day he was born. All of those things that came from his humanity and frustration and just suffering, which God understands. But God doesn't consider any of that to be something that needs to be called to account, because God says of Job that Job said what was right of him. So when you take all of that into consideration, that really changes things. What I love about the beginning of chapter 42 is it reveals Job's heart. It reveals why God chose him. It reveals a blameless man. I now see my focus was in the wrong thing. It wasn't for me to understand. You are just too great and mighty for me. You're doing things I'm not ever going to know about. Shame on me for questioning, Lord. I'm done. I'm humbled. I'm going to sit in dust and ashes. That is a blameless man. After the Lord had said these things to Job, he said to Eliphaz the Temanite, I am angry with you. Now I believe he speaks to him first because he spoke first. And he must have been the leader of the three, or the one that was most, the elder of the three, or the spokesperson, the one that started. Since he's kind of kicked off the little speeches to Job, God addresses him. Now that would be creepy. I am angry with you and your 2 friends because you have not spoken of me what is right as my servant Job has. Wow. So now take 7 bulls and 7 rams and go to my servant Job and sacrifice a burnt offering for yourselves. My servant Job will pray for you, and I will accept his prayer and not deal with you according to your folly. Okay, God says so many things right here. You're going to break it down. First, I want us to understand that this nitpicking, let me tell you what you've done wrong thing, God considers folly. That needs to be a lesson for all of us. God sees it as folly. They didn't have any clue what they were talking about. They just thought they knew what they were talking about. They had no proof to come and say, well, Job, I saw you steal my watermelons. So God's probably holding you accountable for that. You thought I wasn't looking, but you came into my backyard and you took them all. You loaded them. They didn't have any proof. They're just sort of supposing. And God's saying, that wasn't right. They were accusing and saying things that they had no inclination about. So God's calling that kind of behavior and attitude folly. He asked them to go and offer sacrifices, 7, which 7 is the number for completion. 7 is God's number, signature number. But notice how God tells Job to pray for his friends. There's one thing that could hold Job captive, and that's called offense. After all of this is said and done, and now things are good with God, and the sores go away, and he has a moment to sit and reflect, he's going to think about those 3 friends that came and all of those conversations that they had, and that could make him hornet mad. And he could fester and sow seeds of bitterness because God justified him. God said to the friends, I'm angry with you. You've not spoken what is right. So Job could be saying, yeah. Did you hear what God said? You bunch of losers. But in order for God to put Job in the place where he needed to be in the midst of all of this, and to further demonstrate Job's willingness to respond to the Spirit, he tells Job to pray for his friends. And Job's prayer is going to be what tips God's favor on the friends. Notice how that works. He's going to clear it all up. I will accept Job's prayer. Well, what if Job doesn't pray? What if Job says, I'm not praying for them, Lord? Well, then he wouldn't be a blameless man, would he? So it's so cool how God fixes everything on all accounts. How he moves upon Job's heart, how he tells them that he's going to pray, how the friends know they're going to be released from their folly, not just by God, but by their dear friend Job, that they've just battered. It's like they put sores on his sores. So, the friends do what God tells them. And Job, verse 10, after Job had prayed for his friends, the Lord made him prosperous again. Now think if Job had not prayed for his friends. But he does. And praying for the friends, all is made well. Job's heart is made well. The friends have to know that they're forgiven. That's important. And everything is good. And God works good where people are willing for things to be worked. This is beyond. What this says about God and how God humiliates Satan in this? At the end, it's humiliation for Satan. It's humiliation for Satan, not because of what God did, that God showed his muscle and put his finger on the devil and humiliated him. He allowed the devil to have what he wanted to have. And God shows that a heart that is fully devoted to him, in the end, will humiliate the devil, because the devil can't have any power there. So where you and I need to be is to say, no matter what you do, devil, I will never stop loving my Lord. It does not matter. This is a story about, from Job's behalf, incredible love for God. Incredible love. A love that would not let go. To the extent that, God, I'm not understanding this. You and I have had this great relationship. And now I feel like, you're so distant from me. And the not understanding and the venting and all of that is coming from that. And God understands that. It's so amazing that in all of that, the universe is watching. The universe, billions of angels are watching this. What will be the outcome? And wow, what an outcome. What an outcome. And Satan is shown that to those that love the Lord, they do not love him for what he gives. They love him because of who he is. And so he's humiliated, even though Job never knows anything about the test. What a glorious day will be when you and I get to hear from Job ourselves in heaven one day. How amazing. May we continue every day to be watchmen on the tower, to be looking out for the traps that the evil one wants to ensnare us with. May we understand that keeping our hand over our mouth the majority of the time, James is very clear. Be quick to listen. Be quick to listen and slow to speak. May our speaking, may the majority of our words be consumed with praising God and his greatness and his majesty, in knowing that no matter what we are going through in this life, God is enough. If we have him, we have everything. We are loved completely. His love flows through us powerfully. May we take hold of that power and not allow the enemy to sow seeds of doubt, discontent, and offense into our lives. That we would learn to pray for one another the way that Job did, so that we can be healed. May the Lord continue to bless you. May he continue to grow you as you live a life in urgent desire to see his face. Time is short. God bless you as you continue to study his word. Oh, the sound people don't know not to turn it off till I take it off. Our prayer time we're going to do at the end today, because there is a great lesson to be learned from the book of Job and how he prayed for his friends and how God healed through prayer. So I'm going to ask you to divide into groups of 2s and 3s in our prayer time, and to specifically pray for a friend or 2 friends that you know are in need. There is great power in praying for